So today we're explaining all the car engine sensors, every single one of them. And for each of them, we're going to explain what it does, how it works, where the sensor is located, and what happens if it goes faulty. Obviously, this is a pretty long video with information on 16 different sensor types. So of course, you can find timestamps for each sensor down in the description so that you can quickly access only the sensors you're interested in. Now, although there's a lot of sensors that are needed for the engine and the ECU or the engine control unit to do their job properly, many of them work in pretty similar ways. They do different things, but they have very similar characteristics. And this is why, to make things more logical and easier to understand, I have grouped the sensors into 5 categories: position, airflow, pressure, temperature, and air-fuel ratios, emissions, and others. And we're starting right away with position sensors. The crankshaft position sensor tells the ECU the position of the crankshaft, because the position of the piston is fixed in relation to the position of the crankshaft. By knowing the position of the crankshaft, the ECU also knows where the piston is inside the bore, and by knowing this, it can initiate fuel injection and or spark ignition events at the correct time. Crankshaft position sensors are most often either Hall effect, which is 3 wires, or VR, variable reluctance, which is 2 wires. Although they work slightly differently, both rely on the basic principles of electromagnetism to read a trigger wheel made from a ferrous metal. The trigger wheel is going to have 1 or more teeth missing, and whenever a missing tooth passes in front of the sensor, it's going to change the signal that the sensor sends to the ECU. Now, the position of the missing tooth in relation to the sensor is going to be fixed to a certain position of the crankshaft, and by seeing the change in the signal, the ECU can tell exactly where the crankshaft is at that moment in time. Now, the ECU is also configured to the total number of teeth on the trigger wheel, and by knowing the total number of teeth and measuring how often the missing tooth passes in front of the sensor, the ECU can calculate engine speed or RPM. Now, every car engine has 1 crankshaft, and thus it only needs 1 crankshaft position sensor. The crankshaft position sensor, in order to read the trigger wheel, must be located very near it, and the trigger wheel must be installed on something that rotates at the same speed as the crankshaft, and that's usually either the crankshaft pulley, the timing gear where the timing belt or timing chain attaches, or the flywheel. So one of these 3 locations is where you're going to find your crankshaft position sensor. If the sensor fails completely, then the engine will not start, or it will start but stall after running very briefly. If the failure is not complete, then you may get jerky or uneven acceleration, engine misfiring, rough running, poor idle, bad mileage, and so on. Now, the camshaft position sensor does the same thing as the crankshaft position sensor, but for the camshaft. Now, in